What's going on, guys? This is Josh. Welcome to Treksplained. Here I drink and do episode summaries and talk about Star Trek stuff in general. Now, without further ado, let me Treksplain something to you. The alternate is the 12th episode of the second season of Deep Space Nine. This episode deals a bit more with Odo's origin and what some people may call his father, Dr. Mora Pol. It begins with Quark trying to sell off the sealed ashes of a Ferengi orator and creator of the holosuite known as Plague. Now this is the Ferengi death ritual. They are vacuum desiccated into an ashy powder, sealed, and then sold off as a fine collectible. Obviously, some Ferengi would be worth more than others. Well, as for these ashes of Plague, Odo suspects Quark of wrongdoing, but pretends that he's interested and that he has a hobby of humanoid death rituals. He is thinking about starting a collection and that Quark would have a special place reserved just for him. But it turns out it's not Plague. Plague is actually alive and well. Quark says he's a victim too and actually thought it was Plague. This discussion is not resolved, however, as Dr. Mora Pol enters the bar and begins talking with Odo. Dr. Mora is the Bajoran scientist who was assigned to Odo after the Cardassians discovered him during the occupation. Odo clearly looks a little uncomfortable. Quark tries to play up Odo as the best security officer ever in an attempt to suck up to someone that Odo seems to have a connection with. Odo yells at Quark before he and Dr. Mora both leave, and Quark smiles on. As Dr. Mora and Odo are walking along on the promenade, Dr. Mora scolds Odo slightly for being rude to Quark. Odo says he just doesn't know Quark. They end up in another little cafe area and talk about Odo's career. Mora asks Odo if he misses the work they used to do. Not being stuck in a lab, of course, but the exploration of who and what Odo is. And then comes in the opening credits. After the opening credits, Commander Sisko and his son Jake are talking about the test on Klingon opera Jake has on Friday. Blah blah blah, parent lectures, blah blah blah, teenage doubt. You know the stuff. This resolves as Odo rings the bell and comes in. He asks Sisko for the use of a runabout for him and Dr. Mora to go to the Gamma Quadrant. A planet near the wormhole picked up something that might be connected to Odo. And the next scene, the runabout goes through the wormhole and to the planet. Jadzia Dax and one other Bajoran comes along. Dr. Mora talks about Odo's lab work, and it's clear Odo is uncomfortable. Dax silently notices. They continue talking about when Odo turned into a glass beaker and he realized he was sentient. They begin orbiting the planet and beam down to the surface. There are some ancient structures around and they discover a monument with writing on it. They can't read the monument at the moment, but are going to take it back to the station. They also find a small amount of liquid that is similar to Odo. They attempt to beam back to the runabout, but an earthquake happens, gases start pumping up through the surface, and everyone starts coughing except Odo. Odo is able to initiate the transport. Back in sickbay on Deep Space Nine, Odo is fine, but the others are recovering. Odo appears actually worried about Dr. Mora. Odo and Sisko are walking along the promenade and talking about Sisko's father and Dr. Mora for Odo. Odo thanks Sisko but tells him Dr. Mora is not his father. O'Brien is now analyzing the liquid in a lab. It does appear alive. It's a life form, but not much else is known. We don't know if it's sentient or just reacting to stimuli. Odo looks at the monument, and O'Brien and him talk about it briefly and hope it's the key to Odo's past. Sisko is called from his quarters to the science lab by Major Kira. The life form escapes by breaking through a level 5 containment field. They're going to try to find it, but special needs are going to be needed since it's such a unique life form. It likely escaped through the ventilation. Dax enters, but does not believe the life form escaped on its own. She tells Odo that Mora wants to speak to him. Dax studies the monument as Odo leaves. In the infirmary, Odo tells Mora the life form escaped. They talk about the metamorphic qualities of the life form and how it behaved before escaping. Mora falls asleep on him. O'Brien is in a small corridor and stumbles upon ooze coming from a broken panel. It appears to be the life form, but it's dead now. Gross. It's like thick applesauce. Dr. Bashir and Dax are analyzing it, and it turns out the atmosphere of the station didn't have enough CO2 in it, and it just couldn't survive. But they still don't think the life form escaped from the lab on its own. Dax tries to leave. Bashir flirts a bit and comments that she likes it after she leaves. But one day he'll stop chasing her. He hears a noise in the other room and goes to look. It looks like the life form is back, but bigger! It tentacles Bashir's neck, and he uses a laser cutter to scare it off. He calls out an intruder alert. In the next scene, Bashir tells O'Brien, Mora, Cisco, and Odo about the encounter. They talk about anything unusual. The temperature was higher than usual, just like the planet the life form came from. Dax says there's some organic residue, aka slime, that was left behind. Enough to test. Cisco calls for red alert. Cisco leaves and tells quote-unquote Constable Odo to close down the promenade. Mora mentions that it is a term of affection, and Odo says he barely tolerates it. They leave and walk along the promenade. Mora compliments Odo's police method and compares it to the scientific method, and that those methods are very similar. Odo reluctantly agrees. Mora says he's proud of Odo. Aww. In a lab, Dax is analyzing various things when Odo and Mora enter. Odo tells Dax he needs to close down the promenade and then leaves. Mora and Dax talk about Odo a bit and how to compare the genetic samples from the life form. Mora talks more about Odo and says he misses him. Odo left the lab, but maybe it was for the best. The results come back, and it appears the two samples are from two different life forms. Now, here's a reminder that the two samples are the one O'Brien found in the corridor, and the second one is from the cellular residue left behind after the attack on Bashir. In Odo's office, Mora appears, and they discuss Odo and the DNA chain of the organic sample from the infirmary. Mora already knows. He's seen it before. It's Odo's DNA. Odo's like, what? They discuss Odo's hibernation cycle, and Odo says he was in his bucket for both incidents. Side note, Odo sleeps in a bucket. Odo is trying to track down himself. They compare Odo's possibility of being the life form. The gas from the planet might have affected him. Mora goes on to tell Odo all the things the Federation might do to him. Fucked up, really. Put him in the zoo. Really? The Federation would never. They're so good. Mora and Odo argue about trust and how much time Mora dedicated to him. Odo begins getting angry and starts to lose cohesion. Mora begins backing away out of the office. Ops picks up the unusual disturbance and begins tracking it. Mora appears in Ops and tells them it's Odo's, but a flipped out Odo who isn't quite the same being as usual, and that it's likely he has hostile intentions towards Dr. Mora. They talk about luring out Odo and capturing him in a force field. Mora will be the bait. They set up the trap on the promenade and begin baiting Odo. Cisco talks to Mora, and then Cisco walks away with Kira. Kill Odo if absolutely necessary. They spring the trap, and Odo eventually comes out of a vent to head towards Mora. The force field works, and Mora looks at the Odo being and apologizes in his own way. He made Odo a prisoner yet again, just like in the lab years ago. Odo runs out of energy, and they turn off the force field. Odo collapses on the promenade floor, and Mora holds him in his arms. They have a lot to talk about. Now in the infirmary, Dr. Bashir tells Odo he has no idea what happened to him, but that with Mora's help, Odo is now free of the gas from before and should be back to normal. Bashir says Odo should rest and then leaves so he can talk to Mora by himself. Odo and him make up. Mora hopes he'll keep in touch, and Odo says he'd like that. They hold hands in a father-son sort of way, and the episode ends. That's all for today's episode. Thanks for watching Treksplained. If you liked today's video, please drop a like and subscribe so you get updates on new videos. See you next time on Treksplained.